two elements or reminders really that I want to leave you with tonight, assuming that I can't really teach you much, is one of the importance in being able to define the universe in which your agent exists, and two, try to figure out whether you are a low accuracy or high accuracy application. And I certainly think having some sort of understanding of those two, and it's not that it's difficult to understand, but making a choice of those two will allow you to make fewer mistakes than we might have. So title was Solving Real World Problems with Scala. That is very descriptive. So we are exactly what our friend from IBM defined before, a company which set out to solve a very easy to understand pain. So we're not trying to bring people to Mars. We're not trying to electrify all vehicles in North America. We're just trying to schedule meetings. No more, no less. There's no ambition of us doing travel, doing your receipts, helping you in your inbox, or doing 14 other things. We just schedule meetings. And it's not that this idea of setting up meetings is something which you don't understand. I'm sure everybody in here, if I asked you, have you done a meeting this week or the week prior, you would say yes. If I asked you, did you like kind of setting it up, that kind of lovable ping pong back and forth where I say Thursday, you say Wednesday, I say Friday, you say 1, I say 2, I say my office, you say your office, and we send out an invite, you would probably say, no, I fucking hate it. But somehow my lot in life is to do this myself, and the only way I can escape it is if you somehow win the corporate lottery and become SVP of Flim Flam at Time Inc., and you get a human assistant to manage your calendar. The way we've attacked this, and you're very welcome to call bullshit on this, and this is obviously something for where we're highly biased, is one for where I don't believe that there's yet another app or extension or plugin or web service or TongleMe or DoodleMe that's going to solve the pain that comes along with setting up meetings. I actually do think we agreed what we want, which was that human assistant, Tom, which I want to sit in my front office and manage my calendar. I just can't afford $60,000 a year for Tom to sit around and work my calendar. So it's on me. But if it's on me, and I actually like Tom, then I actually think it's on us as a company, X.AI, to figure out how do we then replicate that experience. Don't reinvent the process. Figure out some real world pain and figure out if it's not time, if there's not this moment for where you might actually be able to not fully replicate the human, which is completely kind of ludicrous to suggest, but this sliver for where whenever somebody emails me and says, hey Dennis, can we meet up for a Diet Coke first week of December? I can reply back and say, yeah, I'm up for that. And this example here, I think, describes it very well. You've all seen either this slide or some version of this email, and if you haven't seen this email, go to your inbox right now, because there'll be one of these emails in your inbox. It'll say something like this: hey Michael, good to talk to you yesterday. Do you have time to meet up later today, tomorrow, perhaps early next week? I'm free most days after 1 p.m. You've seen 100 of those emails. But really, look at it. That's not an email. That's a fucking riddle. It's a riddle which you want me to solve and somehow overlap your little riddle with my calendar and then figure out when to meet up. Early, what does that even mean? Most days after 1 p.m. Perhaps later today. It's like, I'll look at this later. And later means me in my underwear at 11 p.m. at home trying to solve this. The solution, though, certainly as we see it, is this agent setting for where you have no application, just an agent which you can CC in, and then describe the objective of the job which you want done to the agent, and then it's now the agent's job. So, hey John, I'd be happy to meet up. I've CC'd in my assistant, and she can help put something on my calendar. Her job is now to remove me from the conversation, have this very human-like negotiation really back and forth on this single subject matter, and drive it towards conclusion, not round in circles. It's not about answering questions. It's about knowing where am I in this negotiation and how do I drive it towards conclusion. This here, and the one reminder from this setting, is that if you want any agent in any setting to be able to operate, you need to be able to define that universe in full. just like self-driving cars, obviously anyone who's working on that is not trying to create a model of the real world, as in, then you're insane. So you'll try to create some sort of simplistic model of the world, cars, roads, signs, pedestrians, concepts that can exist in that, and that becomes your universe, and now you need to kind of be able to exist within this universe that you've created. And you might say, Dennis, don't use the word universe together with the word setting up meetings, as in, I call bullshit on that. I wish that was the case, as in, it feels like one of those things you and me can go to the whiteboard right now and map out the meeting scheduling universe, as in, new meeting, cancel meeting, reschedule, running late, you're mandatory, you're optional, Samantha is the assistant, Tom is going to be the coordinator. How many things can exist in that universe? And what we found is certainly that it was way more complex than we had anticipated. That is always the case. But when we set out to kind of solve this about 3.5 years ago, we certainly pitched our investors on a slightly shorter journey than it really was. And we can have a laugh about that, but certainly a slightly shorter journey. But the important thing, which I certainly didn't fully appreciate on that kind of December, when I got the team back together, was the importance of being able to define that. There's two things for why this is super important. One, if the universe isn't finite, then I don't think you can create an agent that can exist in it, because that means you have outcomes that you're unaware of. So you can't have some part of it. There's no level of intelligence today for where they can invent new outcomes. They can certainly be more accurate, and your predictions can be better tomorrow based on the fact that you collected more data, but they're not going to create new pathways. So if you cannot come up with that finite definition, you are doomed. But you also need to make sure, once you make it, that you are very comfortable in you having reached the end of that definition. Now comes just in closing on this part here, and that is the first reminder. Go out and see if you can define that universe in full. I was somehow cocky, stupid, naive, all of the above, to believe that that very first version you come up with was it. But if you have a version, what do you do then? Then you hire a whole bunch of data labelers. And just to give you an idea here, we're still a tiny startup in Manhattan, but we have 100 people that does nothing but labeling. That is one part of the team, labeling. What do you do then if you figure out that your initial version of how you define time isn't robust enough? Do you flush all your past data down the toilet? As in, give me another kind of version of what I just said. Do you call off SoftBank and say, hey, remember that $2 million? Yeah, we pissed it away. But we think we're closer now, so we're going to make 2 changes, then we're going to collect a whole nother set of data. First reminder, focus on that universe. Now, second reminder, and you knew this already, so I'm not saying anything new. I'm just kind of underlining something that you probably had in mind already. Second one is be very strict about whether you play in the low accuracy or high accuracy application space. And there's a massive difference in how you go about implementing this. And this will be in that little Venn diagram of what we're trying to talk about tonight, overlap with Scala. And I'll tell you why I think there's an overlap here. And again, you can say, that seems stretched. But I actually do think that's true. This, though, just to give you an idea of what is a low accuracy AI application. Pick something as simple as, in big ass quotes, Facebook's ability to pick up people in the pictures that you upload and suggest whether they're your friends or not. And if they pick up 3 out of 5, I'm kind of a happy chap. If they pick up 2 out of 5, I'm happy. If they don't pick up anybody because it's a super dark picture, I'm kind of okay. I might not even want to label them. But whatever they do, thank you very much. I appreciate it. On the other end, we kind of came a long way on those self-driving cars. As in, we could probably send them out on the highway today. We just need kind of a footnote saying, hey, by the way, for every 2,000 miles, we're going to hit a pedestrian. that's probably not going to fly. It's still pretty fantastic software, but it's not going to fly. You're in a space where you're not allowed to make many errors. We happen to be in this space here. We're not in a space where the outcomes are so dramatic as with self-driving cars, but if you and me agree to meet at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning in Westchester, I live on Wall Street, and you don't turn up, I'm going to be a little bit pissy, as in, I took the train, it took forever to get to Westchester, and now you're not there. Not cool, Amy. Not fucking cool. And in that setting, you have this responsibility towards your customers, where there's an expectation that I asked you to do a job, you didn't do that job, and if you don't do your job X number of times, I gotta let you go. And it's not like you're letting Facebook go if they don't find all your friends in your pictures. And this here is equally important, and that is a strong reminder that if you have no idea of whether you're one or the other, I think you are setting yourself up for some struggles. The reason and the connect here to Scala is that if you want, and we picked Scala as a backdrop for really all of our natural language understanding, our reasoning engine, all our natural language generation, and pretty much anything else which is kind of front-end labeling for our labelers have been done in JavaScript. But the whole system is really built on Scala. But what we get from this is, one, you get to hire people, I believe, and you can now disagree, that are already mentally in the high accuracy space. Does that make sense? Or did you see that connector? That's certainly a connect we tried to make. Two, we need applications for where a lot of those traditional silly mistakes, remember, the system is autonomous. So anything for where it fails, it fails, right? For where I didn't turn up, I didn't get the invite, I sent the wrong address, I said something which was in complete disconnect to what was being asked. We cannot supervise that, so once we get the agent to work, it is fully autonomous. And all of the traditional kind of fails you have for where you can just do another query, whatever piece of software it might be, there is not really a setting like this. So we certainly believe that the language have given us some pains up front, but some security down the line, and we've hired people who kind of flourish in that environment. That's us. That's me and my 150 some odd propeller head friends, having spent, come December, 4 years trying to create a reasonably easy to understand agent that schedules meetings. Click. 12 minutes? We're okay? Should we do one question? At least just one for you. Say, Dennis, you're making no sense here. Go home. Oh, microphone. Oh, we fucked up.
Why Scala? Scala is could you elaborate more about the language?
Is that if you want to live in a high accuracy application space, you need people who write applications for where you have very few errors. And you and I can talk about any decent engineer will try to write an application for where there's very few errors. Do we agree? But we must also agree that that's a spectrum, right? That any application, some will have more errors than others. That's a spectrum. And the people which you hire will have a different level of tolerance for what they're willing to accept. That's also a spectrum. So what I thought we could get from Scala, outside of us kind of making a bet on a compiled language, which is type safe early on, was actually a pool of people that wanted to write error-free applications and wouldn't tolerate the whole idea of having some sort of acceptable fallback in our infrastructure. So that's certainly our reasoning. Doesn't mean that we couldn't have survived on Java. I'm sure, I hope this is not being recorded because one of my engineers see this, they will stab me in the heart. But that was certainly one of the ideas and backdrops. And I'll tell you how we got started. So we reached out to assemble that initial team of very senior Scala engineers and found one in Germany, found one in Brazil, and found one in San Francisco. Certainly the best of the best that we could find, and somehow persuaded them to say, hey, New York will be your new home, and if we could assemble those 3 guys, then the remainder would kind of come behind them. And I think we were somewhat successful. I have a reasonably large, we're still a small startup, but reasonably large Scala engineering team. And one of our engineers will actually come and chat a bit more about some of the details one of these days. Cool. Thank you very much.